Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our fourth Swiss-Turkish webinar series. I am sure you have attended various webinars, virtual conferences, and panels since the pandemic has started. At the beginning, we all talked about the virus itself. How long will it take until the normality will come back? If this virus released from a laboratory or not? What's happening with the business, our employees, clients, or how are the government supporting their people and its economy to avoid an escalation of a crisis? Now, since most of the countries try to adapt to the normal life, depends also on the country, we try to look into the future, rather short, middle term than long term, because we still can't forecast. There are increasing signs that economies have passed the worst as lockdowns have been eased. Macro policy responses to the coronavirus pandemic have already reached historically extraordinary levels. Nevertheless, we also see more and more companies, institutions, and organizations adapting their strategies and business plans to keep up with the new normal. Said that, today we would like to discuss the topic, investments in the new normal, with our valuable guests from different sectors. What are they thinking? How they are facing the challenges, and last but not least, what could be the benefits if you invest in Turkey or in Switzerland? Before we start with our discussion, I would like to introduce you to our panelists. Ms. Hande Islak, Ms. Sirpa Tsimal from Switzerland, Mr. Ansgar Bornemann, Mr. Arpat Şenocak. Hande Islak is the Deputy Director of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development in Turkey, responsible for the bank's investments in a range of corporate sectors. She's based here in Istanbul and leads the EBRD operations in such areas as manufacturing and services, agriculture, natural resources and mining, property and tourism, and telecommunications. She manages a portfolio of over 2 billion euro comprising both debt and equity. Before Hande started her career at EBRD in 2009, she worked for several years in different national and international banks, where she managed a large loan portfolio. And Hande Islak holds a Bachelor of Economics from Middle East Technical University in Ankara. She's married and has an 8-year-old son. Sirpa Tsimal is an economic development specialist. Currently, she is the Director for Investment Promotion at Switzerland Global Enterprise in Switzerland, where she focuses her work on emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, personalized health, blockchain, robotics, and advanced manufacturing in attracting foreign direct investments to Switzerland. Sirpa has more than 15 years of experience working with and leading international teams in marketing communication, business development, market entry, strategic innovation projects. Prior to Switzerland Global Enterprise, Sirpa had different senior positions in the private industry and was the founder of the Location Lab and managing partner at Siman LLC. She also ran and scaled the mentorship program at 2 health tech accelerators, this in New York, but also in the state of Connecticut. Sirpa graduated from the University of Zurich in 2003 with a master's degree in communication science, international law, and social anthropology. Ansgar Bornemann gained experience at various levels in the FMCG sector and assumed leadership roles in different countries and regions, including Germany, Austria, France, and Saudi Arabia, after he finished his MBA at the University in Saarbrücken. He joined the Nestlé family in Germany in 2004 as marketing president of Nestlé Schroller. In 2012, he was holding the general manager position in charge of the ice cream business in the Adriatic region, followed by regional head position in 2013. Before he was appointed as the CEO of Nestlé here in Turkey in 2019, he managed Nestlé Ukraine and Moldova from 2015 until end of 2018. He is married and has 3 children. Arpat Şenocak, last but not least, graduated from Neuchâtel Law School in 2001 and qualified as a lawyer before all Swiss courts in 2003. Specializing in the field of mergers and acquisitions, he joined the international law firm Gide, Loyrette, Nouel in 2004. He qualified as a Turkish lawyer in 2008, and since then, he's a partner at Özdirek Can Dündar Şenocak Attorney Partnership, the correspondent firm of Gide, Loyrette, Nouel here in Turkey. He has been involved on a large scale of inbound and outbound cross-border M&A transactions in Turkey, Europe, and in Africa, and specialized in sectors such as banking, insurance, industry, and energy. Before he was elected as president of the Swiss Chamber of Commerce in Turkey, Arpat has been a member of the chamber since 2005 and was a treasurer since 2013. So before I go to my first panelists, I would like to encourage the audience to write their questions into the Q&A window at the bottom of the screen. I would also like to inform that this webinar will be recorded and sent to you by a link after this panel discussion. Looking now at my first panelist, Ms. Hande Islak. Hande, the EBRD is dealing with different project investments worldwide. Can you tell us more about your institution and especially what kind of projects or even companies you have supported during COVID-19 and which support packages in the new normal time you are offering?
Thank you very much, Oz. I'm very pleased to be part of this webinar this morning. Let me quickly explain who is EBRD. The EBRD is owned by 69 countries, the European Union and the European Investment Bank. Financial investment projects are at the heart of what we do, but we also provide business advisory services and promote trade finance. We are active in 38 countries across 3 continents, from Central Eastern Europe to South and Eastern Mediterranean to Central Asia. Our operations span a range of industries, from manufacturing, agribusiness, infrastructure to transport. We diversify our business under 3 lead sectors: FI, which we call it bank and non-bank FIs, sustainable infrastructure, which includes infrastructure, energy and transport, and corporates, which includes manufacturing, agribusiness, property tourism, telecom, nature resources, and SME banking. Just to give a bit of an understanding about the scale of EBRD, last year, in 2019, we invested 10.1 billion through 450 projects. And of that financing, 46% was invested in the green economy, which makes EBRD one of the world leaders in climate finance. Our mission is to promote transition to open market-based economies in our countries of operation. Through our investments, we aim to make economies more competitive, well-governed, green, inclusive, resilient, and integrated. We are investing in the form of investment loans, but also equity investments, meaning we're becoming a partner with companies. I might add that the EBRD's capital position is extremely strong. We are a AAA rated bank, and that puts us in a better position than ever to work with our clients and partners. Turkey was one of the EBRD's founding shareholders back in 1991. However, EBRD's decision to start investing in Turkey was in 2019. And in only 4 years, because of the fundamentals of the country, we went from 0 to 1 billion investments annually, with even much larger volumes later. While investing in Turkey, our strategic priorities are strengthening the resilience of Turkey's financial sector through our FI sector, developing the country's knowledge economy, promoting economic inclusion and gender equality in the private sector, and accelerating the country's shift to the green economy. To give some figures about our scale in Turkey, the total volume of our investments in Turkey that we have done over the last 10 years stands at 12.6 billion in just under 320 projects. So I would not be moderate and will admit that we're one of the largest foreign investors in Turkey, because Turkey is by far the largest economy we currently work in. Our portfolio here is much bigger than anywhere else where we invest. How did EBRD respond to COVID crisis? By mid-March, we were the first multilateral development bank to launch an emerging crisis response, which we call it COVID-19 Solidarity Package, which under this package, we focus on providing urgent liquidity to our existing clients. We will be committing practically all our activity this year and next year to countering the impact of the pandemic and also support the economic recovery. In financial terms, this will amount roughly to 20 billion euro. As for Turkey, the coronavirus outbreak has hit the country at a particularly difficult moment. The economy just started to recover from the 2018 confidence crisis and was still fragile. Nevertheless, against this continuously challenging background, the EBRD aims to maintain a high level of engagement in Turkey. We are likely to invest at least another 1 to 1.5 billion in 2020, of course, subject to many further developments. But more importantly, part of this ABI will be crisis response, but some of them will be still projects which will facilitate the economic recovery. Has there been any change in our operations after COVID crisis? Actually, I thought a lot about this. Instead of referring to what has changed, maybe I can explain what hasn't changed. What hasn't changed is that EBRD is still dedicated to building sustainable open market economies and promoting Turkish private sector in the region. So far in Turkey, for the last 5 months, we have extended finance worth of 870 million for the Turkish economy. And a large portion was provided to the banking sector to boost lending to small and medium-sized enterprises, which we all know that they are the backbone of the economy. Financing also included loans to Turkish corporates such as Türk Telekom, fruit producer Anadolu Etap, confectionery food manufacturer Ülker, auto manufacturer Ford Turkey, pulse producer Yayla, logistic firms Netlog Logistics, and the electricity distributor Enerjisa. We are providing short-term liquidity and working capital for existing clients, which is something quite new that we introduced just because of COVID-19. But also we continue supporting our clients' investments. Banks can also receive financing under our very popular trade facilitation program. And new emergency facility is introduced to meet essential infrastructure requirements of municipalities. I hope this is enough to answer your questions, Mehmet Bey.
Thank you very much. Yes, a lot of information, and I'm really astonished what EBRD is doing here in Turkey. So I assume and I see Turkey, the country, the market is very important for EBRD. So I will, you touched the topic with the sustainable development investment. So I will come back to you then with that question. So the COVID-19 pandemic has hit global trade and investment at an unprecedented speed and scale, that's for sure. So multinational companies faced an initial supply shock, then a demand shock, as more and more countries ordered people to stay at home. So governments, businesses, and individual consumers suddenly struggled to procure basic products and materials and were forced to confront the fragility of the modern supply chain. So online orderings and so on. The urgent need to design smarter, stronger, and more diverse supply chains has been one of the main lessons of this crisis, I would say, from my perspective. Ansgar, Nestlé entered the Turkish market also pretty long time ago. So that was in 1909. And we know that Nestlé keeps investing in future growth. Do you plan any investments in the short, medium, and long term? And is it possible that your future investments thought can change in connection with the digital investments, for example, with the supply chain, especially because of the COVID-19?
Look, as you mentioned, Nestlé has been in Turkey for more than 100 years, which also proves that is one fundamental of investment Nestlé is doing. We think long term. We enter markets and we invest in markets, not for short term, for long term. And even you see here more than 100 years. And to be honest with you, this has not changed through COVID, because what we do is we look on certain factors. What is the market growth? If you look on Turkey, and I just got some numbers, in the last 39 years, Turkey has experienced only 5 years with negative GDP. All the rest of the 34 years, Turkey has had positive GDP. We look on population growth. Population will further grow in the next years, and with 82, 83 million people, Turkey is a big nation. We look on the per capita consumption in the categories we are working in, and we see the potential comparing Turkey to other markets, let it be coffee, let it be cereals, let it be food or drinks, whatever it is. The growth opportunities are there, especially if you look in the last years, that the purchasing power of Turkish consumers has increased. So COVID this year is a challenge, and you mentioned certain changes. However, in Turkey, I have to say, online ordering has increased. Nevertheless, more than 90% of the food and beverage sales have still gone to the traditional trade organization. So having said this, COVID is a challenge for us this year. First, protecting our people, and second, making sure that there's business community. But for us, it has not infected our view on Turkey. We go on investing. We have investment plans in the next years. We are just got green light from our center to invest in localizing and starting production of one of our categories where products have been imported so far. So we will invest in a production line here in Turkey to produce locally. So COVID, yes, a challenge for this year, a challenge to manage and adapt. I'm positive, believing that in the next 365 days, 1.5 years, there will be a vaccination. So the challenge perhaps on this special virus will be solved. Digitalization, yes, we learned during the last 3 months working from home, trying to see how it is going and how we can still manage and connect to each other. But independent from COVID, for us, digitalization in our factories, in our office is an ongoing practice. Yes, I believe online shopping with suppliers that deliver to home will get a boost and will not get back to former levels. But still, if you look on the percentage and I look on Turkish consumers, the vast majority of this will still going to bakkals, going to open markets, going to shops. But in connecting and working together, it will have an impact. Supply chain, yes, perhaps what I expect here that also we will reconsider global sourcing. We will reconsider not completely to go to local sourcing, which we anyway do, but we probably will look on different opportunities. And there I believe Turkey, with good infrastructure, with a good workforce, with a lot of raw materials, being close to Europe, has a great opportunity to be considered in the next years. For us anyway, Turkey was and stays and will be a country of investment because of the points I mentioned.
Thank you very much, Ansgar. You mentioned the keywords with the globalization, localization, so I will also come back with these wordings and questions. Arpat, I'm sure you have also read and you know there are several countries which are protecting their domestic interests, especially takeovers of private local companies by foreign investors. So which values have been diminished because of the coronavirus. As I remember, for example, Australia announced a temporary tightening of conditions for entry of foreign investments with a strengthened review process lasting several months, so to kind of have a control check. So it was announced clearly that they don't want to have a predatory behavior, that companies are not going to be bought on an unvaluable price. So can you tell us more about Gide in Turkey and what have you faced during the pandemic time, especially if you look into your M&A task, and have you seen such a behavior in Turkey?
Thank you, Mehmet. As you know, Gide is a Paris-based international law firm. We're present in Turkey for more than 2 decades, since the mid of the 90s. And as such, we've been able to experience a number of crisis or difficult situations or period of time through which Turkey went through over the past 20 to 25 years. When comparing with this COVID, I'd say, experience that the world is facing, I think the reaction of Turkey has been slightly different than the one of other countries, especially in Europe. When we talk to our partners in Paris, London, Brussels, our friends in Switzerland or in Germany who advise on cross-border M&A transactions, the feeling we got, or the feedback we got, was that there were certain, a level of uncertainty as to how foreign investments or cross-border M&A transactions would continue developing in the short to mid-term in Europe, for reasons also that you mentioned. Certain countries have kind of tried to take measures to avoid a significant volume of foreign investment flying in. With respect to Turkey, obviously this situation is different. The macroeconomic situation of Turkey is different. There's obviously a need for foreign investments in Turkey. And that's why I mean there was no such measures obviously taken on the investment side. Even though I think on the trade side the situation is slightly different, but that's another topic. In terms of investment into Turkey, I think Turkey was kind of lucky in 2 different ways. One, timing-wise, because Turkey has started the year and ended 2019 as well, with quite a good level, a volume of M&A transactions and direct foreign investments coming in. And by the time when European countries mostly were starting to face this COVID situation, Turkey was not affected yet. So we had a kind of a gap of 2 to 3 weeks in between what happened in Europe and what happened in the developments here. So in between these periods of time, basically across the month of March, I think while Europe was slowly reconsidering how to position itself, the process ongoing in Turkey were already launched, so that most of the transactions, and I would say all of the transactions we started in the beginning of the year, were either closed or are about to be closed now. So there's a continuity in the transaction, nothing was impacted. And the response of the Turkish business sector to COVID was, I think, much quicker than the one in Europe. And this may be due to actually the second factor that I would see as a lucky factor for Turkey is experience in handling crisis. Our private sector is experienced, the government is experienced, and we've seen a kind of a management of the crisis also psychologically that helped business going on. Obviously, I'm not saying that Turkish economy is extraordinarily doing well, but still, in the current circumstances, I think even if you compare to France, Germany, or other countries, Turkey, in terms of attracting foreign investments, did a pretty decent job. Obviously, the process was slightly affected in terms of on-site visits. If an investor willing to buy a factory, a production plant, willing to go on-site visit, this was a bit complicated in the first few weeks of the process. But for the rest, I think M&A transactions are now, for the past 15 years roughly, mostly electronized. So everything can be handled remotely, and we have been able to close a number of transactions, sign a number of transactions, negotiate online, whereas I'd say it's more customary to go face to face for negotiations. But here, I think everyone got used to this remote life, and everything actually went smoothly. So this is also the positive takeaway of this crisis. We are really able even to conduct, obviously businesses, but also do transactions and investigations and due diligences, everything remotely. So no major hurdle, I would say. in terms of impact of COVID on the M&A and investment environment. And if you look at the sectors, actually there's a variety of investments coming in. I mean, only from our perspective, we've seen investments in the insurance sector, construction, music, entertainment, internet, food industry. So overall, I think there's a still strong appetite for investments in Turkey, and the current situation didn't change much in terms of real investment. I think capital market is slightly different, but in terms of hard investment and industrial players, I think this is I mean, the situation is quite optimistic.
Thank you very much. So that means that you were already prepared for this crisis 15 years ago. So with like the digital world, chapeau. So you mentioned governance experience, which leads me to the next question. Ansgar, if I recall well, once we had a discussion and you said the soft factors, not only the hard factors in terms of investment, are also very crucial. So the psychology, rule of law, governance, legal certainty, and so on. So what did you mean exactly with that, and how did you feel, especially here, about the governmental support on foreign direct investments in Turkey?
Yes, investment has a lot of things to do with psychology, and psychology is about expectations. Return on investments are hard facts and figures, but if you invest your money, your perception and feelings of this also play a major role. And there we always need to have take in consideration, it's the same in Nestlé. If I'm asking for investment in Turkey, I'm not alone in the Nestlé company. There are colleagues and CEOs of other markets who also want to invest. And then beside hard factors, as I said, soft factors, how is the country development, what is the political situation, play a major role, because they deliver on expectations, belief, and basically also play a role in the return of your investment. On the government support, and as you mentioned, I worked in different countries, I have to say the programs that exist in Turkey are excellent. There is a lot of opportunities as investor to get government support. Very clear, very structured, very visible, very transparent, from tax opportunities, even to financial support, to exemptions. Very well organized in that way that it depends on regions where the government want to further increase or focus investment, subsidies or investment support is bigger than in regions that are already well developed. And there I have to say, when I've seen what is in Turkey and we are using it, we are doing, as I mentioned, a big investment in the coming 1.5 years for a manufacturing line of category which we so far imported. We also get support from the government, who is interested to have this product manufactured in Turkey. And compared to other markets I've worked before, these programs are very good, very supportive, very clear. And what is even more important, if you ask for support, the one-stop shopping. So you have one agency, one institution that is coordinating everything from permission to build buildings, from all the stuff. So the way to deal with it in Turkey is good. And I believe the program is excellent and is one of the advantages Turkey has for attracting not only foreign investment, also investment of companies that exist in Turkey.
Thank you very much. So that was very nice compliments. I know among the participants, listeners, there are also several people from the Investor Turkey. I'm sure they are very happy to hear that.
Congratulations.
Arpat, so regarding the governance, so has the concept of good governance changed during COVID-19 and now in the new normal time? This is one of my favorite wordings now, normal, the new normal. How do you see the legal framework, so rule of laws for new foreign investors coming here to Turkey?
First, maybe on the governance point, I mean, the DNA of Turkish entrepreneurs is not typically incorporating the approach of governance as we can see it in Western countries, obviously. And I would say most of the companies in Turkey still don't have a really established and well settled governance mechanism, and especially in family-owned businesses. I would obviously exclude listed companies and big conglomerates that we all know who have deeply rooted governance principles for a couple of decades. But there is, I think, with the increase of foreign investments into Turkey and the increase also of institutionalized investments such as the EBRD's equity investments or other international financial institutions, an increased awareness around what needs to be improved and what needs to be done. And the pressure of shareholders and investors on sustainability, on the green approach, on gender diversity is something that also helps, I would say, motivating also and creating that awareness within the Turkish entrepreneurial sphere. As a recent development, for instance, in Switzerland last week, the parliament approved a long discussed and debated amendment to the corporate law, and included new provisions whereby 20% of board of directors and 30% of executive committee members had to comply with a gender diversity principle. Obviously, these are, I would say, beginning principles, and the adaptation period is quite on the long term because we're talking about 5 to 10 years to achieve these thresholds or targets. But still, this is quite a good improvement. And considering that Turkey has been following, in particular, Switzerland and Germany in terms of corporate law because of the roots of the legislation here in Turkey, well, I mean, this is a positive sign also for Turkey, not now, obviously, but maybe in the coming times, to see here in Turkey as well more stronger on this type of diversity related and other sustainable issues that surround governance. Coming quickly to your second point, I mean, as part of COVID and as most countries around the world, the Turkish government also took a number of protective measures, both aiming at protecting the economy or boosting the economy, and also protecting the companies, such as the limitation on distribution of dividends or the protection of employees in this temporary period of time. Here, I would say, I mean, there were obviously positive things being done. The key element, I think, here in terms of lawmaking practices in Turkey is always the one that, I mean, from a legal perspective is a bit confusing for us, and also confusing for certain international investors, because what international investors need, and obviously what lawyers need in order to be able to opine on the topic, is legal stability and predictability. And this is the part where Turkey has some room for improvement. There are measures that are being taken that are well thought sometimes, but on which I think there is a need for a bit more stability in order to create an environment that is, I'd say, that brings a better level of trust also for international investors. This is the key element. Turkey has wonderful dynamics from an economic perspective, a young population, and companies like Nestlé have been here present for more than 100 years. So this is, I mean, the basics are already there. But in order to further attract investors and be able to compete with other countries, there are a few things like this on which there is a need for improvement.
Thank you very much. So you made also a nice bridge and told a bit from the legal aspect what's happened in Switzerland last week. So I think, Sirpa, so we have received very interesting insights from our previous panelists concerning investment in Turkey, but we are not talking only about Turkey. So they mentioned about good governance, opportunities, and so on. We know Switzerland is one of the most innovative countries in the world, which we are also promoting as Swiss Business Hub here in Turkey. But we also know, and we have to admit, it's not the cheapest place to produce there. So how is the investment climate in Switzerland, and how have investments, global setups and expectations changed through COVID-19? And I just add a second question. In terms of the FDI, foreign investments in Switzerland, is Switzerland focusing on special sectors or technologies? Are there specific opportunities and challenges that Switzerland Global Enterprise is currently focused on addressing? And when I say Switzerland Global Enterprise, I assume not everyone knows who Switzerland Global Enterprise is. So can you tell us also shortly who we are?
Of course, thank you for all those questions. Let me start quickly to introduce Switzerland Global Enterprise. We are the investment promotion agency of Switzerland. So similar what Invest in Turkey does. We help international companies in evaluating Switzerland as a business location and help them in implementing their investment projects. So your first question of how is the investment climate in Switzerland, I would like to start with the state of global FDI and then look at how Switzerland fits in that new world, as we say now. So UNCTAD, UN Trade and Investment Agency, and FDI Intelligence, they both estimated that FDI, foreign direct investment, is down globally by about 40% because of COVID-19. Earliest recovery is expected to be at the end of this year. And in a survey they did, about 30% of executives said that their investment projects have been postponed until 2021. But at the same time, they said, it looks a little doom and gloom, but companies at this moment also look at their global setup and re-evaluate their locations. So we as an organization have been actually quite busy in the last couple of months with requests from companies to look at Switzerland. But we also noticed that the conversation has shifted a little bit. It's not only about accessing new markets, how to grow globally, but it's rather the conversation is about now how to set up my business to withstand a crisis like this pandemic. So I think the key word is really here, resilience. We've seen following trends or conversation, all accelerated through COVID-19. I don't think it started because of that, but the pandemic accelerated those trends. So regional, smaller supply chains, onshoring with local suppliers is one, de-risking supply chains and keeping business continuity is an important factor and aspect now in planning investments. Now is also the time for digital transformation projects and advanced manufacturing projects. So how to automate production processes using emerging technologies like artificial intelligence or blockchain, for example. And there's also a trend towards small batch manufacturing. So produce where customers are. And of course, remote work. We all still, or many of us still work from home. Companies have realized you don't need the expensive office space in downtown, whatever city you are, but you can also have some of your employees work remotely. Facebook and Twitter, for example, already announced that their employees can indefinitely work from home. So where does Switzerland fit in this whole new world? I believe we have a pretty good offering for companies in this post-COVID world. Switzerland has been ranked as one of the most resilient countries by Forbes, and there are other rankings, for example, by CEO magazine. How they handled the whole crisis, the government, how they handled the crisis. Loans, for example, have been handed out very pragmatically to small businesses. So they had to fill in one form. Next day, they had the money on a bank account. So very pragmatic, and the whole economy showed really resilience. Switzerland is a small country, so has never been mass production. So we're not here for any mass production, but rather we have a diverse network of suppliers. So it's ideal for small and highly automated production for European customers. One example I can share with you, Hamilton, a US medtech company. They've been quite in demand now. They produce ventilators. They have the European headquarters in Switzerland, but also production. They've been adding investments there over the last couple of years, and also moved some of the production from Eastern Europe to Switzerland because it made business sense to produce there. So that's just one example. And Switzerland, as you said, Mehmet, is a highly innovative country. So companies come here to develop, test their products and services because there's also a very pragmatic collaboration with local research institutes. Yeah, so quickly about our focus on Switzerland, what sectors and technologies we focus on. Switzerland traditionally has been strong in life sciences, engineering, etc. So those are sectors we focus on, but now in a new era of digitalization, we adding to that. So we're looking at personalized health, for example, the whole life sciences sector now becoming digital, so precision medicine, digital health, e-health. That's one sector. We also look at artificial intelligence. Switzerland has some of the best basic research institutes in AI. For example, ITSIA in Lugano, there's the professor Jürgen Schmidhuber. He has been researching on AI since the 1980s or 90s, and also developed the long short-term memory technology, the underlying technology that's been used in speech recognition by Google or Alexa, Siri. So next time you ask Alexa a question, you know it's Swiss innovation that's in there, part of it. And also blockchain. So maybe just quickly the whole blockchain crypto valley. I'm sure you've heard about the crypto valley in Switzerland. It all started in 2014-15. A couple of foreign entrepreneurs were looking for a location where they can work on their blockchain ventures. They looked at Malta and the Netherlands and a couple of other locations, found their place in Zug, Switzerland, because of the local government. They were very helpful and gave them guidelines in how to get certain legal certainty for that new, at that time, not many people knew about what blockchain is for this new technology. And I think that sums it up pretty nicely what Switzerland stands for. The government is very pro-business, business-minded, and gives the kind of the playground for new technologies to develop, and that way it's a very innovative country. Thank you.
Thank you, Sirpa. So it's really nice to hear that we can say whatever we touch, whatever we eat is always a bit Switzerland in it. So you don't have to be a big size, so you can achieve the maximum also with minimum. So that's what we are looking for and stand for. The two words always everywhere now, the last few months, I would say, especially during the COVID time. So to be resilient and sustainable development. As we all know, the UNDP has 17 sustainable development goals, starting from no poverty, climate action, gender equality, and so on. Nevertheless, sustainable development is nowadays the wording, and what I said, one of my favorite wording became. So even banks promoting their sustainable investments. Hande, is EBRD looking into those SDGs, so Sustainable Development Goals from UNDP? And what is your green economy transition approach?
Thank you. EBRD's green economy transition, and in EBRD we like using synonyms, we call it GET with its letters. GET approach is aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. But the GET approach is delivered through EBRD's unique business model and its sector and country strategies. No doubt it's at the heart of EBRD investments. GET approach is the bank strategy for helping EBRD countries build low carbon and resilient economies. Through the GET approach, the EBRD will increase green financing to 40% of its annual business volume by 2020. So we are urging all our bankers to focus wherever they find the green projects. To date, EBRD signed 34 billion green investments. So this is, we like calculating the money in corresponding to the emission savings. So that for 34 billion euro is expected to reduce over 100 million tons of carbon emission yearly. Yet investments, when we say, range from renewable energy projects into energy efficiency investments in the manufacturing and the corporate sector. They also include interventions in sustainable transport, waste minimization projects, investments that improve the climate resilience of our clients. GET financing, when we say GET financing or when we define a project as a GET project, what we are looking at is the following. So it could be an investment, a technology that helping that company to ramp up its existing activities. And it happens in a large economies of scale and have a systematic impact. As an example, if you support a steel project or a chemical project, where the modernization and the new investment will help the company to reduce its carbon emission savings substantially, we call them a GET project. Likewise, any enhanced innovation in sustainability areas are called as GET projects, because as you know, with the technology and with the innovation, the new products, the new processes are more sustainable and greener than the existing technologies. Also, we include broadening of environmental dimensions of investments under GET category. These could include introduction of some new management measures, studies, environmental investments. That's also crucial. And last, sometimes we finance a GET project, but maybe the investment doesn't have a GET nature, but if through that client, if we have a chance to use the client and the client's platform for an active policy dialogue with other private sector players in the sector or with the governmental authorities or other stakeholders, which we call this discussion as a policy dialogue, this is also quite eligible for our GET financing. Needless to say that projects that align well with our GET approach are therefore more likely to receive positive investment decisions from our investment committees. Carbon intensity and climate vulnerability are very key issues for EBRD countries. The regions, in the EBRD region, carbon intensity is almost 5 times higher than EU average. And of course, this region also includes Turkey. And EBRD countries are particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. As high carbon economies, our countries face significant pressure on their environmental assets, including land, soil, water, air, biodiversity, etc., thus posing a risk to the health and livelihood of their citizens. The GET approach uses the full range of EBRD financial instruments. So while lending or while investing as an equity partner, we can apply our GET approach for the project. Apart from directly financing our clients, we also work very closely with several donors, such as Climate Investment Fund, the European Union, the Global Environment Facility, the Green Climate Fund, and many other bilateral donors, because we would like to mobilize climate finance as much as we can for our clients. We have developed a range of dedicated programs under EBRD, and we have a very comprehensive department that is ready to promote green investments. Maybe last, I could also emphasize the fact that consultants play an important role in helping EBRD achieve GET objectives. This is not only in terms of identifying and securing financing for these transformational green projects, but its consultants' inputs are also necessary to ensure these projects follow best practice environmental and social procedures, in their design, development, and implementation. So if you become a part of EBRD family, there is no way our ways cross on the GET objective, Green Economy Transaction Transformation objective of the bank.
Thank you very much, Hande. So I'm sure there will be big interest for your GET approach, because the scope is quite large, I would say. It's almost like Nestlé. EBRD is also everywhere. So that's what we like. I'm looking at the time, and we are getting close to the end. But before I face the audience with the questions, we have received already some questions. I would like to ask you one question to the Turkish side. So I'm looking to Ansgar, Hande, and Arpat, and then one the same to Sirpa. Can you then give me with 1-2 sentences your answer? So how do you see Turkey as a place for investment post-COVID? And what is COVID-19, a threat or opportunity for investments in Turkey? So I'm starting with Ansgar.
Look, as I mentioned before, first question, in the area I'm working, or we are working in Nestlé, fast-moving consumer good, food and beverage, I do not see anything that has changed the great opportunities in the future to invest in Turkey in the FMCG business, due to the fact great big population, well educated, increasing purchasing power. So the demand of this will definitely increase. COVID impact, I strongly believe that multinationals will start rethinking their supply chain, will probably think to spread suppliers and have more suppliers to have alternatives. And there I believe, especially fast-moving consumer good companies or food companies with a big European market close to Turkey, will reconsider and see in Turkey perhaps more opportunities. First, not only to produce in Turkey for the Turkish market, but also see Turkey as a great export hub for production of fast-moving consumer good products to be exported to EU. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely, thank you. Hande, how do you see it? Can you give us in 2-3 sentences?
Sure, I also completely agree. I think COVID shall be an opportunity for Turkey. It's clear that one of the most important consequences of this pandemic and the disruption that it has inflicted on global supply chains is now putting much greater scrutiny of supply chain. In the new world we're entering, companies will be putting considerable emphasis on resilience and diversification, as you also very well highlighted. So they will have to, after this pandemic, to survive, to recover, and to once flourish again. So, but it's no secret that in many sectors, a single economy, often China, is currently the dominant global supplier. Turkey has therefore the potential to significantly scale up their exports. It's one of the countries which stands to gain most of from this new dynamic. Also, our economists made an analysis about the comparative advantage of Turkey, and it looks like Turkey has around 190 products where the comparative advantage of Turkey is quite high and can benefit from this new dynamic. Additionally, changes to the Turkey-EU Custom Union will ensure that it works better for both parties and allows Turkey to make the most of this trend. In a world of increased regionalization of economic activity, shortening supply chains, and geopolitical uncertainty, the development of closer relationship between Turkey and the EU would benefit both parties. So last I could say, I think Turkey is an economic powerhouse in our region. Yes, we expect Turkish GDP to contract quite sharply this year, but we also forecast a robust recovery of 5-6% growth in 2021. So we will remain committed to support Turkish private sector and work closely with authorities and stakeholders like the participants of this webinar.
Thank you, Hande. Arpat, you have actually a challenging position because half Swiss, half Turkish. You can give two answers to both questions, like how do you see it concerning Turkey, but also how do you see it concerning the investments in Switzerland?
Regarding Turkey, I think, I mean, I obviously agree with what Ansgar and Hande said. The positioning of Turkey geographically and the proven track record of production hub regionally is a strong advantage for Turkey in the post-COVID era. Here, we have already seen a couple of our clients moving their either starting from sourcing or investment, relocalizing to Turkey in sectors such as textile, cosmetics, and chemicals. So if you look at, again, at what Turkey is able to achieve, especially in the textile and automotive sectors, I think there's no need for further comment on that. I mean, Turkey has obviously a good opportunity here. The only thing is that, I mean, it needs to use this opportunity wisely. And that's where I think keeping good channels of communication with European countries is essential here. We don't need further crisis. We're already going out of one. I think that's now time for Turkey to build up on this opportunity and continue attracting further investments. When it comes to Switzerland, I think, again, here, proven track record of highly valuable investment coming in. Yes, obviously, cost of life, cost of labor is an issue if you compare to Turkey, but I think Switzerland and Turkey are not countries that we be competing in the same areas. Maybe unfortunately for Turkey, because we would be lucky to have value-added technologies or R&D centers developing our economy here in Turkey as well. But from a Switzerland perspective, I think there is this COVID situation has also shown that at the heart of Europe you can, or reminded that at the heart of Europe you have a hub for highly valuable production and highly valuable also brain force that can provide valuable assets to any business and to the development of any sectors. So I'm quite confident for both countries, actually.
Thank you. Sirpa, regarding the investment in Switzerland, so what do you think, threat, opportunities?
I do think we as a global community are still feeling the long-term effects of this pandemic. So it's not over that quickly. But at the same time, I'm an optimist. So I do believe in every crisis there's an opportunity. And also for Switzerland, I think now is the time for Switzerland to shine with its traditional values. Switzerland has always been very forward-thinking, business-friendly. So putting the businesses at the center of the economy, innovation. It was always and will be a place for inventing new things, new products, new services, new business models. And at the same time, it's a safe place. So you get, as a company, you get the legal certainties that we discussed before. And I think that's quite unique to Switzerland. So I'm an optimist for Switzerland, yes.
That's good, that's good. We need a lot of optimists in the world, especially when we are facing this kind of crisis. So I'm just looking now at the questions from the audience. There is from Selim Bey from Ankara, the question: there are some restrictions on the company meetings, General Assembly, 65 years restrictions we can consider under force majeure rules. What is the legal situation regarding COVID-19 in Switzerland? So maybe Arpat.
Yeah, I guess this one's coming to me.
I think so. I think so.
Well, I mean, Switzerland has been one of the earliest countries to limit numerous gatherings and this type of assemblies. As far as I remember, there was a starting, I mean, Switzerland started to release this limitation and in the beginning of June. So massive gatherings of beyond 300 something people is still restricted until the end of this month, but for smaller sized general assemblies, staying below this 300 threshold, this is now possible to organize such meetings since 2-3 weeks, I think. So the restriction would be lifted.
Thank you. So looking at the questions we're going to have is for Sirpa. So it says, as COVID-19 is forcing deglobalization, do you expect multinational companies going back closer to their home countries?
I don't think so. Switzerland has been or is one of the places with the highest densities of multinational headquarters. I think that's going to remain. There are many benefits why in Switzerland. I was just talking to IBM recently, and they said how beneficial, how great it is to be so close to other companies, especially for developing new technologies. Blockchain, for example, is quite often developed together with other companies. Novartis has a whole consortia for blockchain. So I think those are the reasons why they stay. I do think it's going to be more regional, smaller maybe. So we don't have the 3,000 headquarters anymore in Switzerland, maybe, but more the 50 people that are located here. And I think one trend, as I said before, from COVID-19 is the whole looking more regional, setting up more regional and not global.
Thank you. So I'm looking at my colleague and she says we are run out of time. I would like to thank to all of you, to Sirpa also joining us from Switzerland, to Ansgar, to Arpat and Hande, but also to the audience who are listening to us. So in very short, what I see, what I heard is a very optimistic, positive aspect for Turkey, but also for Switzerland. So I think is kind of, you have to be resilient, think diverse, and have sustainable goals to go through this kind of crisis, not COVID only, but also in the future. Normally when we have this kind of conferences physically, and we donated to WWF in your name, and we will send you also the certification then by email after this. To all of you, and I would like to promote shortly also our next Swiss Turkish webinar series with the topic, will COVID-19 change the way we work? Because as we know, the leadership management will change. And this will be held beginning of July, and you all will receive the invitation very soon. Thank you very much again. Have a great day and talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.